Greetings, my name's Andrew Sumner. My grandfather, Pop Smythe, bought me my first comic book in Liverpool, England, when I was 3 years old, and I spent the next 50 years hurtling around the pop culture kaleidoscope, first as a fan, and then as a journalist, editor, publisher and presenter. Along the way, I met a bunch of interesting people who will be joining me here, creators, performers, professionals and public servants. We live in divisive, fractured times, but art and popular culture connect people from all viewpoints and from all walks of life. I'm often struck by the passions people enjoy, that they can set aside their differences for and agree on whatever those passions are, whether I share them or not. And that spark, that moment of instinctive, connective agreement, that's what I call a hard agree.
I've had morphine before, just in an ordinary way. It's never done much for me unless I mix it with Newcastle Brown. I found it worked all right if I tried. but it's, you get drunk as well, and you don't really want to get drunk. So there's not a lot of.
Now you've made me. You've given me something I've got to try. So the next time I'm back at home in Liverpool, I'm definitely trying some Newcastle Brown and morphine. That sounds perfect.
I was up in the Dales, rolling around in the snow and having a whale of a time.
That's brilliant. Hey, I'm going to use that moment, that moment of altered states here in North Wales to say, I'm Andrew Sumner. Welcome to Hard Agree. I'm privileged to be joined by my regular guest, the one and only, the great Michael Moorcock, for another episode of Michael Moorcock's Multiverse. And I thought this time around, Mike, we could have the conversation that I've been trying to have with you a couple of times, a couple of the other times we've spoken, but there's been so many other things to talk about. And who knows, we may not get to it fully this time around. That's to talk about your relationship with music. So yeah. When did you always know that you're a musical person? When did that first present itself, and how did you get into playing?
I think it was in the atmosphere in the 1950s. A lot of us were just about emerging at that time. I think I was part of probably the first generation, what you might call the Jimmy Page generation, because I think he was about the same age as me and living not far from me. And I think he was working as a teacher at that time. A guitar teacher. Anyway, so yeah, I think it was that sense of opportunity when Skiffle came along. I think it's got to be Skiffle. I used to deny it later because we started to think Skiffle was pretty crap.
It wasn't Donegan and all that. Yeah,
it wasn't the authentic stuff. But initially, it wasn't. It wasn't just Lonnie Donegan. There were a lot of people doing stuff, and it was American folk music played with a bit of a beat, really.
Yeah,
a sort of upbeat. So instead of it takes a worried man to sing a worried song, it'd be it takes a worried man to sing a worried song. But also it meant that there were instruments that were within your grasp. There were things you could actually. They were using instruments that you could acquire eventually, even if it meant paying $10 a week into a music store to get a cheap guitar or whatever it was. I actually made a silly mistake and swapped my incredibly rare toy soldier collection for a guitar. But I actually started with drums because drums were cheaper. I was my mum wouldn't let me do it in the house, of course. No sensible adult would. This is at the shed at the end of the garden, and the drums were all right, but weren't very satisfying. I didn't want to, they didn't go along with the singing very well. So I got a banjo eventually, and basically learned to play the banjo, and then learned to play the guitar. And we had a skiffle group. I think I was 14 or 15. I was still at school. I left school at 15, so it would have been in that little patch. And we did some gigs. I actually abandoned the guitar at the time for a tea chest bass.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Which was bloody awful because you had to get it on and off of buses. I mean, you get a gig, but then you didn't have a car. So you thought, well, how are we going to go? Can't walk all the way. And the bus drivers didn't like you bringing on this great big tea chest, What a buggy, is that? Because it wouldn't quite fit into the into the storage, the bus storage that they used to have there. I don't know what buses are like now, even English buses.
That section at the back of a route master bus where you'd stick your luggage and sometimes have it stolen by an enterprising thief.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. You can see him actually going with it.
when I first arrived in London in the early 80s, down from Liverpool, we had enclosed buses up there. Yeah, even back then.
Yeah, I know.
And the route master buses were it was like gloriously suddenly being on the set of some holiday or something. But I found out to my cost that they were just about the least secure traveling experience, and putting your stuff in that space was essentially like just casting it away on the wind.
That's right. Yeah, it's like putting it outside your door for somebody if they want it.
Yeah,
it's yours.
Please take this suitcase. Absolutely right.
Yeah. So anyway, that was about the only problem we had with that bass. I actually rather like the tea chest bass. You can get quite a nice sound of it after a while. But that was how I started anyway. Yeah, and doing little skiffle gigs around South London and Croydon and places like that.
Yeah.
And then that led me. It just must be the kind of mind I've got, because it always goes. I always want to find the roots of something. Where it came from. So that's what I started doing. And within about a year or two after that skiffle thing, I'd started to get interested in actual, really American folk music more than English folk music. Yeah. But that I started to sort of be interested in that, and of course the protest movement was just starting then. Yeah. Not just starting, but Pete Seeger was still around, Woody Guthrie was still around, and I wrote to them. I mean, I was running a fanzine as well called Rambler, which was a kind of folk skiffle blues magazine, and so I always had the authority of the fanzine to write to people. But for some reason, I was never kind of nervous about writing to people I admired. This is how I met so many people when I was so young, because I did.
Yeah.
And so Woody wrote back to me, and I had a little correspondence with Woody. And also Pete Seeger. They were both under a sort of house arrest at the time. It was the Un-American Activities period.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
So they were, there was a lot of sympathy for them in certainly in left-wing circles in England, and I was never in anything but left-wing circles. I don't think I could ever have escaped.
Who'd want to be anywhere else? That's the thing.
Well, true, yeah. So it was. I know I sent them both a subscription to Encounter because I couldn't think of anything else to give them for Christmas or to how to get it there. So subscriptions to Encounter were around. I was reading Encounter, so I sent them each a subscription to Encounter, which of course I didn't know at the time was run by the CIA. There it was.
I love it. So are they like, hey man, what are you trying to do here?
Well, it came out a bit later, Stephen Spender, there was a sort of scandal about it. It was a left-wing magazine, but it was financed by the CIA, as was fair, or the FBI, or whatever it was. It was the CIA. It was fairly common in those days. They thought, I was talking to a CIA guy I knew, and he said that basically they knew that the left-wing organizations were always the organizations that in a crisis would come together and get things done. So they weren't actually infiltrating or anything else as far as they were concerned. By supporting left-wing groups, they were basically supporting an emergency system if everything broke down. So it was a very weird. It was very interesting talking to the guy actually about various things, including the Bay of Pigs, and he was actually very upset because they got the blame for and they'd been the ones who'd warned against doing it. That it wouldn't come off. He said we before this went on, we circulated all the South American countries and so on to see what they thought of this. They all thought it was a bad idea, and so the CIA said it's a bad idea, and they went ahead with it anyway. I don't know, it's probably some J. Edgar Hoover thing or something. In those days, it was so complex that I don't think they'll ever work out who was doing what entirely. Anyway, yeah, in music, and then we did a record which was very bad. A demo record at EMI. We went to EMI and did this demo record. God knows it's not around anymore, and I hope it never ever emerges because one side was called "Ache in My Toe Rock." It was a rock and roll song, and the other was a more traditional sort of folky thing.
Around when would this be, Mike? Sort of
55, 56.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Yeah, 57. That's it would have been. Let's see, 56 or 7. It would have been, yeah, on the cusp around there probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was still at Towers and Adventures. Was I still at Towers and Adventures? Yes. Oh no, it was before. So it was about 56. Yeah. It was 56. Yeah. Sorry, and because I can just identify it by where I was working at the time, and that was terrible. I mean, really, genuinely awful. And I did some more sort of general stuff, playing with different people.
And Mike, at this point, what instruments were you playing by this point?
Oh, guitar and banjo, really. I mean, not banjo at all much, except in folk stuff, which I wasn't doing. I was doing mostly blues when I was playing with other people. So I was doing guitar.
Yeah. And
blues guitar is really all I knew how to do, and still all how to do. You just modify it as best you can. And the Soho scene, the coffee bar scene, all of that. Did some gigs in the Gar and Gimble, and generally, I mean, the Gar and Gimble really wasn't a performance place. It was really where people met. But we played down there as well, And oh God, I can't remember. The Two Eyes was in California. The Two Eyes was in Compton. We never went to the Two Eyes. The Two Eyes was the coarse rock and roll place we were too snobbish to go to. We were blues people, and these were rock and roll people like Tommy Steele, that was the best known. But I actually got on with them all right. They were a nice bunch of lads, Screaming Lord Sutch and what Willie Harris, was it? He came from the same town as me, actually. So it's quite a good. It's quite a rich little place. Well, like the Wirral, really, which must have had a famous person every second.
Right on, yeah, in every second house, yeah,
every second house, yeah. So it was really in the air. I mean, the whole thing, it was the period when, just at the same period as, the Yardbirds started to come up, that we all came out of that same, it's like South London was like that. It's amazing how many sort of ace guitarists came out of my little neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never knew any of them. Dick Mick from Hawkwind, I think it was Dick Mick. No, it was, oh God, the other guy. Really sweet, nice guy. Early Hawkwind guy, anyway. Yeah. He moved to British Columbia. He went to Aubrey Manor School, which was just around the corner from my house. I didn't go to it. My mother sent me to a posh private school. I didn't learn anything as much as my friends at the council school, getting a much better education. I mean, I knew that. But it was also easier at the private school, so I was sort of in two minds. Also, the Norbury Manor had what was the name of those guys? Anyway, there was a bunch of really, really, really nasty guys, one of whom shot a copper in Croydon a couple of years later. And so and they were my sort of local enemies. So it was when I had to go to the school to do my 11 plus, but all of this gang were waiting outside for me. And we had to go outside, we had to do a bit of the 11 plus, then we had to go outside. And they were all waiting for me, so I was concentrating entirely on what was going to happen to me when I left the.
As you would.
or yeah, as I would. And I mean, I was in terrible state, and I don't think anybody could have read what I wrote in my exam papers. I certainly failed it pretty spectacularly.
Overwhelming fear will do that to you, right? If you're sitting there with the sword of Damocles over your head, that's possibly right. the worst environment to take an exam in.
It's like a white supremacist being put in jail in the States.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that was how we. It was a pretty ordinary, the general enthusiasm of the day, I would say, for music. Writing was different. I always put writing first. Even when I was doing music, I would only do it if it wasn't interfering with my writing. I had to sort of frame it in some way. So we did a bit of in the 60s. Lang Jones and Charles Platt and me and some other non-SF friends decided to do a record for the 1965 London Science Fiction Convention. And it was going to be called Suddenly It's the Belly Flops, which is a great idea when we were all laughing and having a good time. Then we had to do it, and we did it. And frankly, again, it's another one that actually it is around somewhere because people have taped it. We only had an acetate of it, and we the idea was we were going to sell it at the science fiction convention. I mean, we had other ideas for this. I don't know quite what we were thinking, but we were probably drinking more than we were thinking. Anyway, so we got this little group together to do something that we called the Belly Flops. That was the name of the band. And we mostly did just satirical rock and roll songs. And so that was the second actual recording I did, just as bad. Well, not just as bad as the first. No, it actually had real musicians on it, not in a very good state. And I did stuff, I played stuff around, with privately with friends and so on. But it wasn't really until I think Nick Turner and Bob Calvert. Bob Calvert came to see me, and he was talking about Hawkwind. He wasn't really in Hawkwind at the time, but he was sort of just around it. And he was just saying, you ought to come and see it. It's it's an interesting band. And so then Nick turned up, I think. And this is when I'd been, by this time, this is the 1970s. So it's quite, I hadn't really been doing any music for 6-7 years of any kind. And so they turned up and they said, and then I think actually it was Dave Brock who said, would you do some stuff for us? And I said, sure, yeah, I'll do anything for anybody. And they said, fine. So then I think what happened was Bob had one of his turns, i.e. he had to be carted off to the bin for a bit.
Yeah.
I might have been the one who helped him get there because you had to get him into the bin before the cops got him because he'd go so crazy that he'd get himself into serious trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, you knew what it was, but obviously other people didn't, and he was pretty high. So John Trucks and I had to go and find him and sort of haul him out of whatever situation he'd got himself into, and then hold him for a bit until we could get him into the Priory, which is basically the way it ran. And the Priory wasn't really right for him, but it was about the only place we could put him and make sure he didn't get charged for the various things he'd done while he was high. And so he got a bit worried about not being able to perform with Hawkwind. And I said, well, what I'll do is, and Dave Brock had asked me if I'd perform with Hawkwind under the motorway, which is where John Trucks and various other people had put together a little theatre, People's Theatre. That was the time when Notting Hill was still kind of fighting off the encroachment of the yuppies and so forth.
Right on.
And they wanted to put nice little shops under the motorway, and we wanted to put people's stuff under the motorway.
Yeah. And
so we won for a short while until they burned the theatre down, and which I've always thought was an act of came from the Tory council, or at least somebody close to it. But anyway,
a piece of Tory council terrorism.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, really, it wasn't unfunny. You know, those Kensington Tories thought they owned Kensington.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, they still feel that way now. Which is that whole ethos, local governance ethos, is how you get the Grenfell Tower. That's how it all comes about. Right. And that's those clowns in Kensington as well.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, anyway,
that's a whole podcast.
Yeah, and we were dealing with all those same kind of people, and with a rather ineffectual person in between, sort of supposed to be the social director or something. You know, they'd set him up, and he didn't have any power. But we got this. And so my first gig with Hawkwind. First of all, I said to Bob, "Look, I'm not going to take your job. I've got a job. You know, I'd be happy with that job. I'll do your job while you can't do it. But as soon as you come back, you know, want to come back, I'm off, and you know, and you can go back on and do what you do." So I took over. I started doing lyrics for Hawkwind and performing the lyrics at that theatre, at the little, I don't know what it's called now, Portobello Green they call it now. It used to be a bit of waste ground. And so I did Sonic Attack and you know, various things that I actually recorded later with Hawkwind. I've never been out on an official record doing Sonic Attack. I think I might be on a bootleg here and there, but oddly enough, I've never done it on record. It's always been the Nick or Lemmy or whoever.
Oh, really? Right.
They just don't like my version of it, because it's never gone on anywhere. Even when I've done it in the studio, it's never gone on. Somebody else has done it. I think there are one or two versions around, and I'm sort of a bit hurt by that. I'd like to be able to do one version. Bloody William Shatner did an appalling version.
That's right. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, mate. I mean, in a way, it must be kind of a bizarre honour to have Shatner mangle your work to such a spectacular degree. It's kind of brilliant that he did it. You know, I mean,
I agree.
I mean, they're so gloriously absurd, those albums of his, and so actually poorly delivered, with maybe one exception, which is, did you ever hear that album he did? It's called Has Been. He did it with Ben.
No, I actually have never heard a full album of
well, yeah, who would want to put themselves through it? Well, if you're ever going to listen to the one halfway decent version of what he does is an album called Has Been, which was produced by Ben Folds. And he does a version of Common People by Pulp. And it's basically him talking his way through the verses and Joe Jackson singing the chorus, right? And Ben Folds playing the keyboards. And actually, that is no word of a lie. And I'm being straight up. That is glorious. It's insane. It's insane, but it's glorious.
Yeah.
But
carry on. Have you heard PJ Proby reading the Wasteland?
Oh man.
Which Savoy put out. Dave Britton put it out. He got Proby, and it's actually better than a lot of other people reading the Wasteland.
I agree.
Several poets I played it to. I mean, it was around. It's on a record. You know, it's on a disc. Several poets I played said it was the best version of, you know, much better than anybody, including Eliot's version of the Wasteland. There's one thing where Proby loses it or gets it wrong because he's just reading, and he gets Reading, the town, for reading. So he pronounces it reading rather than Reading. Yeah. But actually, if you can ever get hold of it, PJ Proby reading the Wasteland is one of the great 20th century classics.
I really believe that, because of course I'm sure he was accessing this deep sense of unhappiness within himself, and some of the core emotions that come out in the Wasteland about our relationship with society and all that kind of stuff. I think the reason it sounds so genuine.
It could well be. Absolutely.
I think it really spoke to him, probably without him even knowing it. But that's why it feels. I think that's why it feels so authentic.
It could be. I'm not sure. I mean, Dave probably had other reasons for doing it. I mean, Dave was brilliant at this. He got Fenella Fielding to read Crash.
Ah, brilliant. Yes.
Fenella Fielding started to say, I'm not sure. This is very, very nice stuff, darling. Are you sure? No idea she was reading what she was reading. Yeah, I mean, he got a lot of stuff of that. Most of it, of course, done illegally. He didn't get the rights to do it.
Yeah.
But he's dead now, so what the hell? He's laughing, and we've got what's left.
So to pull back from Shatner's insane version of Sonic Attack, was that written? Where does that fit in terms of, say, Warrior on the Edge of Time? Was it?
It's around the same time.
Around the same time, yeah.
Yeah, I did a whole batch of, I mean, I could do this stuff in minutes, really. I mean, it's a terrible thing to say because I know people struggle and everything, but generally speaking, I can write a song very quickly. It might not be a very good song, but anyway, in this case, what did I call it? Declamatory rhetoric.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't really singing or poetry. It was just, Sonic Attack's, a sort of satirical thing. I mean, whatever you call it, a spoof on public statements during the war mainly. But yeah, so that was it was around the same period. I mean, I knew them pretty much from the beginning. I knew Hawkwind pretty much from the beginning. I then got a bit involved in the space ritual. It was really Bob's and Barney's, really, Barney Bubbles' project. But there's a knock at the door. We've never had a direct tornado through this town, but we get the edges of them, and we've had a tree just crack open in front of us while looking at it and not realizing actually what danger we were in, because this was soon after we got here.
Yeah.
We just think we've got a tree out front. It's sort of doing a kind of dance. It's going up and down and it's just wonderful. My son was here too, watching it, and suddenly the whole thing just cracked in two.
Wow.
And then everything else, and the top came off the local filling station. We haven't had anything really bad here. I don't know why, because we're in Tornado Alley. It goes both sides of us.
Yeah.
But anyway, it got our chimney the last time we had a bat with. It's really a hurricane more than a tornado. It's called tornado. I didn't know this. They don't put it in the literature when you're looking around to see where you're going to live. But this is actually called Tornado Alley. And
Brilliant. I can see why they don't use that as an advertising point.
No, they don't. They don't say, no, Austin, capital Tornado Alley. We're actually, Austin itself is not strictly speaking in that path, but they never seem to hit big cities very badly, and I'm not sure. The worst tornado we were ever in was in Spain. We just missed one here. Got to our flat. We were living in Mallorca then, and it was straight on the sea. I mean, absolutely, literally straight on the sea. It was illegal. The building had been illegal, but they weren't going to tear it down. And I think it was the first night we got there. A tornado came off the sea. I suppose technically it was still a typhoon or something at that point. Anyway, it came off the sea, and just took the whole place. I mean, it as it were, seized our entire apartment, and we couldn't open doors because of the whatever was going on. All our windows were sucked out.
Wow!
That you couldn't find a glazier for months after that. I mean, this is an island, and they haven't got that much spare glass on it. So
no, of course, yeah.
And it was only about a 15-yard width. It just went through and took us a few other people, and then went on its merry way. But
it
now,
must have been terrifying in the moment.
It wasn't in the moment, the way things often aren't, because you're not quite sure what's happening to you.
That makes sense. Yeah, I get it.
It's like I remember I climbed a glacier many years ago, a melting glacier. It was a very dangerous climb, and I hadn't intended to make it. It was my friend who actually misread the route, and we were
we climbed the glacier by mistake.
We did. Exactly what happened. And you could hear the water running under the glacier as you're climbing it. So it's not very stable. Anyway, I did all that. I was about 20 or so, when I did it. About 3 years, nothing. I didn't feel anything. Got to the top, had some raisins, I think that's all I had,
Yeah.
and came down again. But the only reason we climbed this really high mountain was to get away from the mosquitoes, because they're so bad on the plane that you're just desperate to get away from them. And you can reach a certain height on a mountain where the mosquitoes can't make it anymore, and you see them trying to get at you, and you think, you bastard, you can't fly anymore, can you? Then you realize you can't breathe anymore, but that's another story. Anyway, some 3 years later, I was watching a TV program about climbing, nothing, just curious, and I suddenly realized just how near I'd been to a terrifying death then. And it all came over me then. I mean, I just suddenly was terrified, just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
But it was 3 years later that I got frightened. I think all these things, take you in different ways. I just heard my grandson got away from a street gang very, very smartly, actually, and he didn't at the time. Everybody's saying, quick thinking, because it was very quick thinking what he did, and very, together.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know, he did it. What he did was manage to get onto a bus and keep his cell phone. I mean, what they were after was his cell phone. And I'm sure he didn't think twice at the time when he was doing it, but he did it, and it was a smart. He did. I mean, it wasn't just that; there was other stuff involved, and he was very smart. He sort of got himself out of a situation that I know very well from my own experience. It's a strange thing. Anyway, I won't go into that yet. I'll do that another time. We're supposed to be doing music.
Well, actually, the digressions are what make the conversation. So
yeah, I guess so.
If you're on a roll, I'm happy to pursue it.
No, I'll talk about it another time in different context, because of context. Yeah.
So you were talking about Bob Calvert. That's
yes.
That's before we got into fascinating in fact, the reverie about tornadoes and putting your life at risk. Because to close out on that, it is interesting. I've been involved in a few car crashes over the years, and of course the car crashes in the moment, it's true, it's cliche, but it's true, they virtually happen in slow motion. Yeah. And it's almost like you're looking at it on a television set rather than you're actually in the middle of it.
And you think, this isn't going to happen. No, this isn't. No.
yeah. Right on. So I do completely get that. But back to Bob Calvert then. How did you're about to talk about one of your non-Hawkwind collaborations? Yeah,
that was the Space Ritual.
Yeah, Space Ritual, yeah.
Bob. And I didn't do a great deal. I mean, I did a lot of cheerleading and yes, that's grating and that sort of thing at the time. But I mean, I wasn't really involved in it except just, when Bob or Barney were working on it. But I wasn't much involved in the making of the record at all, I don't think. Don't know why, but I wasn't. Probably because I wasn't asked. Usually I just usually Dave would phone up and ask, you're busy, and whatever it was, that he had in mind. I did the whole of, what's that one called? The Warrior on the Edge of Time.
Yeah, Warrior on the Edge of Time. Yeah, you did. So did you write all the songs on that?
I wrote, no, not all the songs on the album, but some of them. I don't remember how many. I performed 3, I think.
Yeah.
One was sort of untypical. It's called The Wizard Blew His Horn, because at the time I wasn't quite sure where everything was going and what was wanted. So I did that one, but it's not. It sounds a bit elfish and fairies for me, or for Hawkwind for that matter.
Yeah.
But I don't remember. After what I did, anyway, I did some tracks on Warrior. That was the first album I did any studio work with Hawkwind on, and that did very well. So I've got this bloody gold disc now that sort of up there. It was, in those days, it was embarrassing to get stuff like that if you were part of an underground band.
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't tell your friends, I didn't know what to do with it. you put it away in a cupboard, and I think you were supposed to give it to your mum. I should have given it to my mum. She'd have liked it, I think. But I've still got it. I actually put it up, but it's in a corner so where you can't really.
Yeah,
no casual eye can see it.
I don't know if you walk into Apple headquarters, as I've done every now and again, the whole thing's festooned in discs. So I think the fact that you've got one, if you've got it, flaunt it, right?
I suppose so. I mean, I didn't think that at the time. It was more an embarrassment, because it put us into that that dodgy area, that commercial area.
Right on.
Sure. Yeah. Anyway, I mean that's well gone now. I mean, Dave's bloody playing the Palladium.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did that, and I went out intermittently when Bob couldn't do it, I would do it at the band's request. So they would either go out without anybody fronting or with me or Bob, but mostly with Bob. He was the true front man band. I was I was the understudy. Came in times of sickness and crisis.
Yes. Yeah.
Very reliable. And I wasn't balmy, or not that balmy.
So Mike, how much later was Chronicle of the Black Sword?
Oh, that was quite a bit later. That was in the 80s. I think in the late-ish 80s, actually. That's actually when I decided not to perform with the band anymore, because it had been Nick Turner who'd first asked me for to do an Elric. To do an Elric venture. It was completely informal. I mean, these days there'd be about 500 lawyers involved and and stacks of paper, but there was never any kind of contract. We just did it, and so Nick and Hugh were working on songs, and I did a bunch of songs for it when asked. But meanwhile, Dave was frankly playing politics, and Nick was squeezed out of the band again, or fired again, which was the second time, in a not particularly pleasant way. I mean, it's a pretty standard way in rock and roll bands, but it's, you turn up for work one day and discover you've been fired, somebody else playing your instrument. Wow. But nonetheless, so I lost interest in it, to tell you the truth, or rather lost enthusiasm for it.
Yeah.
But it was a good show, which basically was done by Dave and Hugh Lloyd Langton. And they had dancers, and they had a mime doing Elric, and it looked good. I mean, the show actually did look good, and the whole thing was pretty good, I thought, anyway. But I didn't perform it very much. In fact, I only performed it, I think, twice, both at the Hammersmith Odeon or whatever it had been. Yeah. It's called now, the Beck's Beer.
Oh exactly.
Yeah. And I was taking Linda on a belated honeymoon on the QE2 to New York. It was that package you could buy. You got the QE2 there, and you got the Concorde back.
Oh yeah, I would love to have done that myself.
I've done the Concorde. I did the Concorde a couple of times, and it was a great plane, but terrible passengers, as I think I may have mentioned.
With David Frost and all those guys.
Well, it's sort of not the people you want to go. You don't want to die with. If you're going to crash into the sea, you'd rather do it with a bunch of ordinary people that you can.
Yeah, you don't want to be sat next to Rupert Murdoch when you're.
No, you don't.
When you're flying into oblivion.
No, he probably had his own one, but still.
Oh, yeah, so
anyway,
true, yeah.
And I'd done sea crossings quite a lot before that on Russian ships. The Russians were the only ones running regular passenger route. Well, I think the Poles had a ship as well. It was in order to get dollars, to get pounds and dollars, hard currency. So they ran those lines, but they took twice as long as the QE2 to cross, which was fine. I mean, you could be drunk for 10 days in a relatively safe environment.
Yes.
But so anyway, that happened. Oh, in the meantime, I'd done a single, which I'd really just done for the hell of it. And it was a sort of a rock and roll single called Dodgem Dude. And on the other side was the B, or whichever side, was Star Cruiser. And they were both just straight old-fashioned rock and roll songs, really, but with a bit of, I suppose, a bit of double meaning to them, like old-fashioned rock and roll songs. And my mind is wandering. I can't remember.
Yeah, that was.
Oh yeah, I did the single, and I thought, it's a nice little single. I just wanted to do it. I actually wrote it on a train, and it's got train rhythms to it. You can actually it's then just little rock and roll songs, nothing special. And Douglas, who was managing Hawkwind at the time, took it to United Artists.
Yeah.
And the next thing I knew was that I'd been invited to lunch by the United Artists people, the UNA people, not UNA, our people.
The ANL people, yeah.
Yeah. And we're sitting down at lunch, chat, this and that. And then the bloke says, well, when do you think you could get us your first album in? I mean, this shouldn't happen, if you know what I mean. There are people out there struggling.
Struggling.
People, genuinely, seriously.
Dedicating every working hour to try and get to this moment.
Absolutely. And I don't even know that that's what the lunch is about.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, he said, do 3 albums. Just wondered how you, what you thought you were going to do on your first. And I couldn't think of it. Well, I said, I hadn't really thought about it. I'll let, and I gave him some babble. It didn't seem to matter. But what I did do is I thought I will, because I'd had that break, I thought I'd put a band together of blokes who needed a break.
Yeah. So
that's what I did. Basically, none of the basic band had ever recorded before, which was. It wasn't a mistake in getting the blokes, Graham Charnock and Steve. It was just that we didn't have any studio savvy.
Yeah.
So a lot of people like the album. I mean, a lot of people like it's still it's still out there. It's still.
And is this the secret origin of the deep fix in effect? So are we?
It's the deep fix.
Are we talking about New World's Fair? Is that the album you're?
Yeah, New World's Fair. Sorry, yeah, that's the one. And also, I had a lot of spin-off material, which Hawkwind, I think, used in their album after Warrior on the Edge of Time. So Needle Gun was one originally mine, but they did. Kings of Speed was mine. But I only realised about a year ago that the reason we got so few radio plays as the Deep Fix was because, and I really had strong anti-me feelings from the BBC. I mean, really, people didn't, enthusiasts would put me on a show and then I'd be kicked off again.
Yeah.
And I really didn't, I never did understand it. I only realized a year or two ago that the Deep Fix, which was meant as a metaphor and never really intended to refer to drugs as such, was what it was. It was, I'd never thought of it.
Yeah,
and there's several things over the years that I've often wondered what had offended people or got up people's noses and so, or what had sparked, say, W.H. Smith's not to do New Worlds or whatever it was. How could these things, just suddenly pop up when we've been running along the same lines forever? Which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And I think there are just little triggers that people have actually got nastier minds than I've got. I mean, I know that. I mean, I've got a pretty nasty mind in many ways, as many will attain, but attest. But I can't actually follow the workings of brains that decide that is, say, filth or disgusting or socially unacceptable or whatever, because it doesn't. I don't seem to notice these things very much. It's strange. Pity about Italy.
No, mate. My family are just going bananas about that. There's a huge level of disappointment in the Sumner, massive about all that. Although, funnily enough, I was on the night of the final. I was actually in Soho with my dad, who it was his 89th birthday, and I'd taken him to Ronnie Scott's because they had a fantastic big band on, Craig Wild big band. He loves his big band. He used to be a big band drummer, and he both he and my cousin went watching the final, because their thing is they're not particularly interested in watching England play. They'd much rather watch Liverpool play. So we went, but of course, Frith Street is the Italian epicenter of Soho, Bar Italia, and so by the time we got there, there's fucking thousands of Italians right in the middle of Frith Street, and either end of Frith Street, there's mobs of English people. And when we came out of Ronnie Scott, which is when the penalties were going on, it was fucking bedlam. It was like a pitch fucking battle, between dick swinging Italians and dick swinging, English dudes. So we basically almost had to machete our way out of that. So I'm with my dad now in his 90th year, hacking my way through this crowd while it was all kicking off around us. It was a fascinating place to be at a fascinating moment.
Yeah, it must be. I remember when we beat Germany, and there were some Germans in the pub at the same time. And it started off with "We won the cup," all very amiable. It turned into "We won the war."
Of course.
And I remember some people that I was with got really scared and were hiding under a table at some point because things had turned a little bit nasty. Not for the Germans, who were kind of in a dodgy situation, but were pulling themselves out of it. But it just carried on anyway. I mean, the once that adrenaline starts, it's horrible to be.
It's completely self-sustaining, isn't it?
We used to live across from a pub, Chelsea and Fulham. When Chelsea, we lived in on the edge of Fulham Road and on the corner of Fulham Road, and the pub across was one of the pubs where the Chelsea supporters used to gather. It might have been the Fulham supporters, I can't, because it didn't matter. Within about 5 minutes of them arriving, the outdoor furniture, great big pub tables, solid wooden pub bench tables, would be splinters. And Linda would be leaning out the window, trying to, screaming at them, stop, call the police and stuff like this. And I'm saying, no, just let them get on with it, because really, frankly, I don't care.
I think that's the moment to close out on, mate, on that bombshell. And we've only just scratched the surface of your music years. So we'll get back into that next time.
All right,
mate.
yeah.
We'll pick it where we left off.
Yeah. And I hope your parents stay chipper and everything, as chipper as they can, and your dad makes it to 100.
Yeah, I hope they're in great shape at the moment, mate, and I hope the very same thing. So thank you very much, brother. You take care of yourself, Mike. Love to Linda, and I'll see you very soon.
Yeah, cheers, Andy. Bye.
Cheers, mate. Take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Hard Agree. This episode was edited by John Horsley and Kenrick Regan, and our theme music, Golden, was written and performed for this show by Liverpool's finest band, Denio. Hard Agree is a production of the Spoilerverse and myself, Andrew Sumner.